evening, our vision statement will be read to us by Board Member Sarah McIntosh. Board Member McIntosh.
All Jefferson County public school students graduate prepared, empowered, and inspired to reach their full potential and contribute as thoughtful, responsible citizens of our diverse, shared world.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will do recognitions and resolutions, and it is my honor to introduce our Chief of Communications, Carolyn Callahan, who will present the recognitions for this evening. Thank you, Chief Callahan.
Thank you very much. I'm always excited to be here to highlight the great things that happen every day inside every single JCPS school. First, tonight we recognize a welding teacher at PRP High School. Unfortunately, he had another commitment and could not be here tonight, but Dave McCoy has been named as a finalist in the Harbor Freight Tools for Schools Prize for Teaching Excellence. More than 1,000 applicants applied for this, and McCoy is one of only 50 teachers from throughout the country who was selected as a finalist. Those finalists were chosen by a panel of judges with expertise in career and technical education, and nearly $2 million in cash prizes will be awarded in October. We will, of course, update you to let you know how that goes, but congratulations to Mr. McCoy from PRP High School. And tonight, we want to honor our principals. Principals, as we all know, are entrusted with the vital task of leading, guiding, and inspiring both our students and staff. The importance of a strong principal cannot be overstated. They play a pivotal role in creating a positive learning environment, fostering a sense of belonging, and driving academic achievement. We would like to recognize our new principals and principals who have taken on new school assignments for the 2023-24 school year. They are not all here tonight, but I'm going to call them up, everyone, one by one. As they come up, we would love for board members to get a picture with Superintendent Polio and the principal, and then principals, if you'll kind of wait to the side, we would love to get a group photo with you all after as well. So we will start with Auburndale Elementary School, Karen Topping. Excellent, congratulations. Next, Bates Elementary School, Sarah Nethery. Congratulations. Blake Elementary School, Stephanie Smith. Congratulations. Breckenridge Metropolitan, Eric Hubert. Congratulations. Carruthers Middle School, Jason Watts. Cochrane Elementary School, Beth Fuller. Cochrane with an E. Congratulations. Crosby Middle School, Clay Ryan. Congratulations. Echo Trail Middle School, Kara Ammerman. Congratulations. Elevate Learning Center, Tompita Rogers. Farmer Elementary School, Melinda Stivers. Grace James Academy, Latanya Frazier Goatley. Great House, Kim Slusher. Greenwood Elementary, Joy Billups. Congratulations. Hartstern Elementary, Lakita Carter. Congratulations. Hudson Middle School, Geronda Majors. J.F. Kennedy Elementary, Stephanie Helm. Kenwood Elementary, Jamila Henderson. King Elementary, Rhonda Hedges. Knight Middle School, Crystal Lanier. Congratulations. Lassiter Middle School, Tim Alexander. Congratulations. Liberty High, Sarah Sutton McCutcheon. Congratulations. Louisville Male High, Keith Cappy. Congratulations. Maupin Elementary School, Allison Bittito. Marion C. Moore, Jason Dietrich. Newburgh Middle School, Shamika Johnson. Norton Commons Elementary, Andrew Terry. Norton Elementary, Brett Fiaschetti. Okolona Elementary, April Hetzel. Olmsted Academy North, Denise Franklin Williams. Perry Elementary, Keisha Fulson. Smyrna Elementary, Amanda Cooper. Southern High School, Serena Sampson. Congratulations. Trunnell Elementary, Nicole Travis. Western Middle School, Naisha Owen Patterson. And Zachary Taylor, Annalise Craven. Let's give a round of applause for all of our principals. Jonathan, would you like to come together for a picture? I'm sorry. Cochran without any O now. There is no. Yes, I know it was on those. Cochran without an E, Melissa Cheatham. Melissa, I am so sorry, Melissa. Let's give a big round of applause for Melissa Cheatham, Cochran without an E. All right, if we can get all the principals together in the middle, we'd like to get a group picture of everyone. Students and staff. Board members, we do have Atherton High School students on for recognition tonight. Unfortunately, they could not make it, so I have asked if it would be okay if we move their recognition to the next board meeting so that they can get the recognition they deserve. So thank you all so much, and that concludes tonight's recognitions.
Thank you, Chief Callahan. Before we let's give them a huge round of applause. At this time, is there a motion to receive the recognitions for this evening? Is there a motion to receive?
Well, hold on, you're losing some on the wall now. Yeah, some back about. You need to wait to do a seat count. Sounds good, see you.
Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda, please? Board member Marshall, seconded by board member McIntosh, all those in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous, thank you very much.
We had some on the wall. We had people on the wall.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the July 25th and August 7th meeting? Minutes of July 25th and August 7th.
All that stay okay, and, somebody ordered the board from outside.
Board member McIntosh, all those in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous, thank you very much. At this time, it is now honored to introduce, this evening for the superintendent, Dr. Barney Polio. Dr. Polio.
Thank you, Chair Ford. In order to not be repetitive, we will be dealing, my superintendent report would only be with transportation in day one. So I will consolidate that superintendent report with our information items that is to come next.
Thank you very much. At this time on the agenda, we would have speakers to address the board on action items or consent calendar items to be voted upon separately by board member request. We do not have any consent items that have been pulled down, and there are no action items this evening. So we will not have public speakers at this time, but we will have public speakers during this meeting, but not at this moment. So you that have signed up to speak with us this evening, you will have an opportunity to speak just a little bit later in the meeting. There are no action items on the agenda this evening. Information items and the transportation update, I will turn it over to Dr. Polio.
Thank you, Chair Porter and board members. So obviously we wanted to come to you tonight with better reports from First Day and our challenges around transportation. And the First Day, I think, really overshadowed some of the great things that we had going on, including some new school buildings, brand new middle school for the first time in 91 years in West Louisville, new elementary school in West Louisville, new middle school in East Louisville as well, along with just an incredible first day of classes and what I would consider to be just some really positive feedback about what was happening in our schools, specifically in our choice zone schools. And so I would like to be highlighting that tonight, but clearly we can't do that. For that, I apologize. Once again, I'll apologize to all of those who were negatively impacted, which includes just about every family in JCPS, because if they were not impacted by the transportation issues, they have not been able to go to school, and then we have families and students who have been significantly impacted by those transportation issues. And for those that are here, we apologize for that. And those that aren't here, we apologize for that if you're watching as well. Apologize once again to our bus drivers, our teachers, our school personnel for having to deal with all of these issues as well. And to this Board of Education, I know you've had to take a lot of feedback as well. And once again, as I told you before, I think this is squarely on our shoulders and something we need to do better, and we will do better. Our purpose tonight is to detail what went wrong on day one. We want to demonstrate how we could have done better, and we're going to correct those issues and how we are going to correct those issues since last Thursday morning. So we do face significant challenges with transportation. I've told you this, and like nearly every other one of our peer districts, we have significant and growing challenges that don't seem to be getting any on the better side like almost every district across America. But that doesn't excuse the fact that we could have done better and definitely should have done better on day one. And we're going to talk about how we should have done that. And so as we get into these issues from day one, what you're really going to see is that we have stretched our system of transportation as absolutely thin as it can be with routes and the services that we provide to students and families. What we failed to do was to change our systems of support and to ensure that buses and routes were always moving forward. And we failed to provide the supports to our bus drivers they needed. We failed to provide the supports to our schools that they needed. You know, when we are this thin when it comes to our routes, we can't afford to have significant delays in the system. Day one is always challenging with the most amount of delays. We face a lot of challenges, especially around our youngest students, making sure that they have a parent at the stop, they know their address, they know their stops. But we had increased challenges as well, K through 12, about making sure all students knew their stops, could communicate effectively with bus drivers, and what should happen if that occurs. And so we had all the regular day one challenges, adding in a new system. And so without us making substantial changes to our systems and supports, we should have predicted that this would have been the end result of what happened. And as a result, major delays occurred, did not have good systems of communications with schools, with depots, with families, and all of that, once again, is on us. Unfortunately, we've been operating under the systems of supports and technology for transportation that occurred when we had 900 bus routes. We had about 900 bus routes, over 900, closer to 950, about 8 to 10 years ago. Now we have 550 routes, while providing more services to students and families with transportation than we ever have. And it is great. We love to do that, but it has stretched us enormously thin. And unless we change the way we do things and provide great services to all of our bus drivers, our schools, and our families, and become extremely efficient, then we will continue to have delays that we had. So tonight we're going to provide you with both short-term and long-term solutions. We've been working for 6 straight days now on short-term initiatives that are in the works for the first day of school on Friday to improve that efficiency. And I have to say, we have to be honest with the community. With 550 routes for a system that was built for 900 routes, we're going to continue to have challenges when we talk about efficiency of getting people home. But what we have to do much better is communicate with families and schools, make sure they know exactly where they are, and make sure we have absolute maximum efficiencies within our systems that we created to support our families. And so You know, the definitive answer, like with most districts right now, is more bus drivers. There is no doubt about it. The answer is we have right now close to 600 bus drivers, and we are going to have to find ways to get more bus drivers, or we're going to have to make a decision moving forward that we do not provide the same services for students and families. That's going to be a difficult decision to make, but what we are trying to balance out is much shorter routes, many fewer routes, and providing the same services all across this district. Not many cities do that anymore. But without a doubt, we're not going to use that as an excuse. First day was on us. I'll say that again. It was on us for not having the efficiencies that we needed. We're going to better communicate with families. We're bringing in some initiatives. Our technology is old and outdated for families with transportation. That's something we should have changed many years ago. We're going to provide our families, schools, and bus drivers with the tools they need to be informed about their routes, about where their child is, about where the bus is, and specifically when and where there will be delays, so families will know that. We're making our routes much more efficient. Now, we can only use the resources that we have. So if we have a stop that has 25 stops or bus stops within it, we can bring in another bus and split that from 13 stops to 12 stops. But once again, that requires another bus that many times we do not have. And so every time we add a stop to meet the needs of families, we really want to do that. That stretches the system a little more thin. And so we're going to make these routes as efficient as we can possibly make them, provide all the services that our transportation system needs to ensure that buses continue to roll forward and prevent delays as we move forward. So we're going to highlight those tonight. We're going to highlight the things we did not do well, which caused these problems, and we're going to highlight the changes that we have made in order to do this. We're going to have some short-term initiatives that I told you about, and then some longer-term things that we are going to implement as well. As you can probably imagine, the challenge is just changing all of the routes, becoming more efficient, is not an overnight thing. We've got to get our kids back in school. We're going to do it efficiently this weekend. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Perkins, who's going to start talking to us about the challenges we faced on first day.
Thanks, Dr. Polio. Over the past 5 days, we've been working nonstop to identify and begin resolving several issues that manifested during that first day, some of which present themselves while we're in the thick of it, and others we should have anticipated. There's 4 major areas of operational breakdowns that we've identified, one of which is the inefficiencies that we have with bus stop additions and the impacts that has on routing adjustments. The second being the lack of contingency plans we had for depots and how significant of a role they play in our transportation plan. And the third thing is the system management that we've been utilizing for a decade now to become outdated. And then lastly, several breakdowns in communication. So every year we add bus stops. That's a pretty typical procedure over the summertime. Students move, they change enrollments, some are enrolling for the first time. Bus stop requests have come in throughout the summer and then more heavily here in the last few weeks. We were provided a routing solution back in early July from Alpha Route. That solution was based on projected enrollments. As those enrollments change, we have to adjust bus stops to reflect those accordingly. Now, as we change bus stops, that also means that we're adjusting the routes. As we adjust the routes, that impacts the timing of those routes. So we were making changes on the fly the last several weeks to routes that we had just handed to our bus drivers. And in addition to that, while we were accommodating or accounting for the changes to the timing of those routes, initially, what we failed to do was plan and adjust the subsequent routes that followed those accordingly. And that's where we ran into some of the unexpected delays. And historically, when we add a bus stop, most of our bus stops, most of our routes belong to a particular compound. We have 13 bus compounds. This year, because we unmirrored our routes to gain efficiencies, that meant that a particular singular bus stop belonged to potentially 2 different buses, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, which meant that the routing was occurring between 2 different compounds, which meant that to change one bus stop would require 2 people looking at it, both in the AM and the PM, adding it to 2 different routes. We underestimated the magnitude of how much that would take to change a route, really changing 2 different routes, one for morning and afternoon. Not only did that take more work, it took longer, And those routes continue to be adjusted accordingly. One of the things that we've been working on through this new routing solution was to minimize what we call deadhead time. And that's any time a bus is traveling without students on it. When there's no students on the bus and it's moving, we're not taking advantage of a very finite resource, and that's our bus drivers. And so part of that plan was to optimize, instead of a bus making a trip to a school to drop students off and then deadheading back to its place of origin, to begin another route picking up students in that vicinity and continue on to a school. Now, that increases efficiencies for us and enables us to add those additional start times to minimize the number of routes on the road at any given time. What we didn't account for was the byproduct that it was putting drivers in unfamiliar areas, and that created some anxieties with them that we underestimated the impact of. And we've got some solutions to address that as well. And then lastly, one of the things that we realized is that our routes are printed on paper, and it's turn-by-turn directions for our drivers. And often they make their own notes on those, and they carry those with them. And that's a pretty antiquated system for our drivers to know where they're going. So the anxiety of being in an unfamiliar area of town was complicated even further by outdated or lack of technology. It's very seldom I get in the vehicle without using the navigation system on my phone. You can't do that on a bus. They can't have a visual stimulus in front of them on the dash to tell them where to navigate. So we're looking into navigation mechanisms that have audible directions, and we have a short-term fix to work with drivers to ease that anxiety as well. Next slide, please. Again, most of you are aware of how depots work. Depots are like sorting hubs. We bring students in from all over the county to these one of typically 9 depots. They exchange buses and then we take them to school. This allows us to be able to provide access and opportunity to students pretty much all across the county to any school that they choose to attend. Our system is really heavily dependent upon depots. We know how critical they are. What we failed to recognize is how critical the timing of those depots staying on schedule was. Historically, we've had 2 depot times, one at 7 a.m. and then one again at 8:30. This year, with our route times and the bus schedules, we had 3 depots. And so when one of those is delayed, there's a cascading effect on the delays for the second depot and the third depot. We failed to recognize that there were a lack of systems in our depot processes, whereby if one bus is delayed, that may be bringing students in from one area of town, but they may be going to 7, 8, 12 different schools. So when that bus is delayed, it's delaying every other bus at that depot, multiplied times 9 different depots. So we've got some systems in place right now to address that so that we don't hold depots up, because we've got to keep them moving on schedule to keep the routes on time. I think Dr. Fuller is going to speak to that a little bit more in a few minutes. Next slide, please. We also recognized that some of the systems we have in place that have served us well are outdated. For over a decade, we've had a first day team that meets starting in February and with increasing frequency as the school year draws near. That involves teams, representatives from every department across all of our divisions, and it really is in preparation of first day operations. And that served us well up until this point. We failed to anticipate that the problem-solving ability of our teams in place on day one, we're going to be able to resolve problems in real time to the magnitude that we experienced them. And that created more communication logjam as well. And because transportation is such a specialized field whereby our transportation staff and at the school, at the compounds and also the central office are really the decision makers for those real-time adjustments. And when all of the issues or inquiries are coming into that one location, it created a bottleneck, which basically put our communication at a standstill, which meant we couldn't resolve issues, which meant we weren't communicating as effectively with our schools and our families because we were trying to resolve issues. So we've already worked on increasing our bandwidth for communication, as well as our manpower to do that. And then again, on the communication piece, we had several breakdowns in our system. For the last 10 years, we've had between 7 and 8 people that work in our call center, the 45 Ride Center. And that's been online now for the last 2.5 weeks. We've already increased the bandwidth of that when we've got over 20 people working those calls already. Additionally, in what we call the command center, which is a group of us at the central office that are working those problems or inquiries or questions from schools, it's been 4 of us in there. And we recognize that there need to be many more. So we've added 11 additional people in there to provide service to our schools and to have direct contact with our transportation compounds. And then lastly, we've already started working on adjusting our routes, looking at some of the crowded overages on buses, but also looking at some of our longer runs and how we can offset those and balance some of the route times. Those will be communicated here in the next coming days with staff and families. We've already started working on solutions with our drivers to help them navigate, to have someone on the bus with them to provide navigation instructions as well. And again, we increased our support at central office. We have a plan now to support depots, so that one bus, or however many aren't holding up that transition at depots to provide efficient transition from coming and going. And additionally, we've got additional buses and fleet vehicles and some more vehicles as well that we can deploy as needed to provide some on-the-spot support when the bus does run delayed. I believe, Dr. Foley, I think, hand it over back to you.
Thank you, Chris. And so I want to say this about these challenges. I mean, this was not about hard work. I can tell you the team was working tirelessly from January on to prepare for first day. So it wasn't about hard work, but it was about not anticipating these problems. And these should have been anticipated, and they should have been taken care of over the summer months. There is no doubt about that. Nearly every one of these things we just told you about could have been and should have been anticipated, and they weren't. And so, I take responsibility for not asking the tough questions and not being as involved in the oversight as I should have been. And obviously that has changed over the past week. So we'd like to talk to you about some of the solutions that we are working on right now and have worked through over the past 6 days. First of all, I want to talk about collaboration. We have not done this on our own. I will tell you, this has been all hands on deck. Every chief has been aboard on this every single day, all day. We are working on this nonstop. And so this is an entire team effort, and everyone in operations and transportation as well. First of all, we continue to collaborate with Alpha Route. I know there's a lot of discussion about Alpha Route and being the result of this. First of all, it is not an AI company, as a lot of people talk about. It's a routing system company. We're working side by side with them for a temporary support and a long-term fix. I said this yesterday, it would be very easy for me to sit here and blame it on Alpha Route. And that would be something I would like to do. I think they could have been more partners with us through the implementation process, as you will see. But what you saw before on this was all of our issues and not necessarily Alpha Route. And so we continue to collaborate with them. T-Mobile collaboration for bus tracking. So we're working with T-Mobile and Edgelog to implement an app for parents and families in schools to track buses in real time. That doesn't excuse the late buses, but what it would do is give a parent access to where their child's bus is at all times. It will give them the notification ability when the bus is late in the morning, so they're not standing at a bus stop for a long period of time, that they can send notifications and say that it's 5 or 10 minutes away from the stop. Or it can have notifications in the afternoon that the bus is entering the neighborhood so that the parent knows that they go meet their bus. Unfortunately, this is technology that most large districts in the nation have that we do not, which was very disappointing to me. And so that is being changed immediately. We hope to have that ready to go. At a minimum, it will be early next week. We would like to have it on the first day, but what we did not have also was the ability for families to call schools and say, where is my child's bus? So on a minimum, on the first day of school, families can call their school and the school can say, your bus is at whatever intersection it is, and we can say how family can then know how close that is. And then collaboration with UPS. UPS has been a good partner to identify and use their technology in routing and possible solutions with us as well. A big issue we have to say is communication. I mean, the one thing I'm going to say, we're going to continue to have a stretched thin transportation system, but what we cannot have is a lack of communication, and we have to take responsibilities for that. We have much tighter structures, logistics, and role clarity around our command center. So instead of 7 people sitting at a table troubleshooting all issues, we are getting a lot of those things to schools and then having all hands on deck in the command center with specific roles. Whether that's a compound, whether that's a depot, whether that's school support, we are making sure that we do that. In school communication support, we had some errors in phones being turned straight to an answering machine at a 5 or 6 o'clock time. We're programmed to do that so families could not get through. That's a communication problem that should not have happened. We're also going to support, we've asked our compound coordinators to tell us how many of our drivers need what we're calling a shoulder buddy, which is one of our employees to sit with the driver and to help them through their route. And then also increase stakeholder feedback. I had meetings with bus drivers on Friday. I'm meeting with bus drivers again tomorrow. We're meeting with school leaders, compounds leads, and I will continue to have these regular meetings so we can get feedback from them. Quite candidly, we should have taken the bus driver feedback when they first got their routes. They said that our bus drivers told us that the routes were too far and too hard, and we said this. When we added stops, we did not adjust the time, bus drivers, so we know that what happened was you were being asked to complete a route in an impossible time. And so that will change. That's my commitment to our bus drivers. And so once again, I have told our bus drivers in our meeting, I can't meet with all of them, but I met with about a dozen representatives, and I said that we're working for short-term solutions and then long-term solutions to make sure that we assist our bus drivers as well, because they were put in a very unfair situation last Wednesday. We're looking at our bus stop quality control. First of all, I mean, there's a lot of requests for changing of stops. There always is. We have to prioritize those that are safety issues. The state dictates to us specifically what are state issues. We are working through those. Obviously, we are working to get every child a bus stop. But you know, when we are talking the amount of new students that we have, the amount of mobility in students, or they just show up on the first day, that becomes a major challenge for us, and I know a major challenge for our bus drivers. We're going to have a depot plan where we tighten communications with the depots, and so we have backup transportation. So it's absolutely ridiculous that we have the depots that we have, like we have right back behind here at Vanhoose in the back parking lot, where 8 to 10 buses arrive. When they all arrive, a horn or a whistle is blown, I'm not sure exactly what it is, the doors open, and all students switch buses to get on their next bus, just like you would at an airport when you're getting a connecting flight. But we hold all buses there until every bus arrives. So if 1 or 2 buses are well behind, had to return a kid to school, the other 9 buses sit there and wait. And so on day 1, we had an inordinate amount of students and bus drivers sitting at our depots for a long period of time. The solution to that, now if it's 5 or 6 buses, clearly we're going to have to do some waiting. But if it's 1 or 2 buses, we can send the other buses on and then bring transportation, other modes of transportation to the depot to take kids home, so we're not delaying 10 different buses. We need a crunch time plan, which means when we get to a specific time, all hands on deck. You know, we had our last 5 students sitting at a school, as we know, until well after 9 o'clock. We could have sent, if we had had a crunch time plan, we could have sent cars to that school and gotten those students home much earlier. And so that is on us for not having that. Route updates, we're going to significantly improve these. Now, we're working on them right now where we minimize the drivers and the routes that have 25 to 30 stops. That makes it nearly impossible for a bus driver to complete their route on time. Unfortunately, what that is going to require is a balance between providing stops that families want and also the buses we have. So as I used the example earlier, if we have 25 stops on one route, we can bring in another bus, divided into 13 and 12, assuming we have another bus. We have contracted with Miller, so we have 20 new buses on the way, starting on Friday, that we will use to do that. The biggest thing long-term is to continuously improve that efficiency of our routes so that we're reducing these lengthy routes. That's what we have to do, because one lengthy route then backs up the next time and the time after that. We found that daycares, although we're trying to make it as efficient as possible, not making it door-to-door, actually held up our drivers longer. And so someone had to come out of the daycare, walk to the corner wherever the stop was, and our bus drivers were waiting longer. So we're doing door-to-door routes to our daycare. Special needs transportation will be improved through the ECE department, contacting all of our special needs families to have what they want. And then we are going to have resources for short-term support all over the county. Buses, vans, fleet vehicles, we'll have them at all of our depots and our compounds, so that if a kindergarten student, for instance, the parent is not there to meet them, we're going to ask our bus drivers, instead of either waiting, or the thing I heard the most from bus drivers, we have to take that child all the way back to their school. And then that delays that route significantly. And so instead, we can send one of our vehicles and meet the bus driver on their route and pick up that child, and then we will assume that, and so the bus driver is not dealing with those type of issues. Or our English language learners that may have trouble, may have missed a stop, not known that was a stop. We are going to improve that so we can use our vehicles then to come pick up that student and help. One of the things that we have to do, we have always tagged our elementary school students for many, many years. It's been a process where our elementary school students get a tag on their bag the first period of the day that tells them the bus number and the stop that they are on. We have given just middle and high school their bus numbers. And so clearly we found that a big problem was middle and high school students not knowing their bus stop and or not knowing their address of where they go, or not being able to communicate with families that you'll see with multilingual learners. So on day one, Friday, we will be tagging all of our elementary and our middle school students with the exact bus that they're supposed to be on and the stop they're supposed to go to. And on Monday, we will be tagging all of our high school students as well with their bus numbers and their stops. We're working hard to support our multilingual learners with some translation systems, clear communication tagging, so that if a student does not speak English, the tag will be the thing that helps the bus driver know not only the bus, but the stop. And then working with our schools to ensure that we have verification of all of our students that are on that. They're an infinite campus and they're calling families to do that. Tightening up some of our systems and our school plans. We need our bus administration, real clear documentation. And so what we did not have was, I was communicating with, once I knew that we were having some issues, I was communicating with our command center and could not get information back to me about what buses had made it to depots, compounds, and left schools. We will now have a clear scoreboard in our command center that gives us all the information as a bus leaves a school. First and foremost at our schools, every 220 bus must leave by 2:30. And a lot, that's not on our bus drivers, that's a lot on our schools to make sure those 220 buses leave at 2:30. If they leave at 2:50, that puts the whole system 20 minutes behind. But we will have that clear system when we move into our new plan on Friday. Family communication leads, so that a school can send out messenger to our parents if needed, even if they don't have the app or have the app, so that we know, the parents know exactly like we did last year. They get a text to say it will be X minutes behind, and it's delayed, and we anticipate that much of a delay. And then a principal command center lead, so we have emergencies with our zone level leadership, but also with our principals, so that we can contact our principals immediately and get support at a school if needed, and we did not have that last week. So our staggered return plan, as you know, we would like to get our youngest kids in school first. Without a doubt, our elementary kids are our hardest ones. Once they get a few days into the plan, the efficiencies become much better. Once a kindergarten student feels comfortable with their bus, with their stop, they know their driver, and we know, yes, having multiple drivers is an increased tax on both students and drivers to know their kids. But to make sure that we take this first day and spend as much time as needed to coach up our elementary and middle school students with their transportation, how they get home, the bus stops, how we communicate. Then on Monday, our high school students will return as well. So to clarify, I want to make sure this is on Monday, August 21st. Next Monday, all of our students will be back, not just high school, all of our students. Students at our multi-level schools will return by level. So as you know, if it's a middle and a high school like Marion C. Moore, the middle would return on Friday, the high school would return on Monday. All our state agency schools will return on Friday, and we will be back to work. All of our staff was back to work today. So that is the staggered return. I do want to talk about some long-term changes we need to make. First and foremost, our internal audit team is going to take a deeper look into what happened. You know they are independent, and the auditor reports to you. We are going to have an analysis of the system and the causes, and a deep dive into what happened. So we want you to know today's report is not the end of what happened on day one. We do want to give our auditors time to do that work, but they will be interviewing people. They will be finding out exactly what happened, analyzing this, and they will bring back to you an official report in the fall that includes what were the leading causes of this. So yes, we can say these were the causes, but our auditors need to be able to interview administrators, parents, bus drivers, those that have been impacted the most in an independent way, so it's not just coming from us. We are, once again, information integrated and IT, significant technology improvements. I mean, just the fact that parents will now have access to where their child's bus is with notifications is an enormous change. And that is absolutely huge. Our schools need to know that. But we have more technology that we can be using. We asked T-Mobile that over the course of this year to present a Cadillac version for us, so to speak, of technology when it comes to transportation for our students. We have technology out there right now that allows students to have a type of key fob or a clip on their backpack that as they get on the bus, the driver has exactly who is getting on their bus, exactly the stop, and it builds the system for them based on who's on their bus, telling them this child is supposed to be on my bus, not supposed to be on my bus. And then if a child is not there that day, the bus driver knows they don't have to make a stop there because they're not on their bus. The technology is out there. We just have to develop that technology better. Once again, it is very disappointing that we do not have better technology than we do. And we have significant technology that can help our bus drivers. And so there are strict laws in Kentucky about what GPS systems can be used for a bus driver. There's a certain type of mount and a certain type of Android pad that can be used. They must go black. The screen must go black while the driver is driving or the bus is in motion. But they can have voice activated that tells the driver exactly for the kids on the bus, you're supposed to make the next right or the following left. Stop is coming up in 400 feet, those type of things. So we just have to completely change our supports. We're going to be working around human resources. I want to say this, obviously we talked about bus driver shortage, recruitment. We're going to have to look at our organizational structure in transportation. Without a doubt, I don't think our organizational structure has changed much in many years, and there's going to have to be some accountability involved in that as well, and that will follow the internal audit report that will be coming. Continued evaluation of ridership, guys. We're going to have to make some tough decisions if the trend continues. Some other districts do things like if a family wants to use a depot, they must transport their child to that depot, then they can get on the bus. We have many peer districts who say we only transport students to a certain reside school. These are very tough decisions to make because we have to focus on equity as well. I know that's a focus of this board. But these are decisions that a lot of districts are having to make. We continue to say, let's provide transportation to nearly every school that a child and a family chooses to go to, but it is definitely stretching us thin. And then really tightening our internal systems of support and communication. I want to say this, we've said some things schools need to do, and yes, we have some things that our schools need to do better, but really all of that was around us identifying it for the schools. This was not about the schools. This was us identifying clear systems of support that we need to give schools, communicating with that. We met with principals yesterday, laid out a lot of these changes, and really they are changes that can be easily made, and they are being made. Once again, it's just disappointing that we had to go through a difficult day like we did in order to do this. And once again, I apologize that our students and our families and our bus drivers and our schools were the ones that had to bring it to us. I say this, that, and I'll close with this, and I said it yesterday, in every crisis there's opportunity, I believe that. And this was a huge challenge that caused a lot of angst and panic with our students and our parents, and I clearly understand that. Our opportunity here is to get much better at what we do. And we are going to do that from this, is to get much better than what we do. I know there's some talk about potentially going back or something like that. Right now, if our current system is built for about 750 bus routes if we have 2 start times. We would have 550 bus drivers, or close to 600 now. We would have to cancel about 20% of our routes every single day if we made that decision. And so that's what's happening in districts all across the county. I know there was a county today that had 50 buses canceled today, a small county, which in regards to our size is probably very similar. And so this is an ongoing problem that every board in this state and in this nation is probably going to deal with. So our opportunity is the fact that we've taken these days to make some significant changes and improve. But as I finish up, I'll apologize one more time for the families, the bus drivers, and those that had to go through this in order for us to get to this place right here. And so at this time, we will take your questions or feedback that you have.
Thank you, Dr. Polio. I will call on each board member if you have any questions or comments that you would like to have at this time. Thank you for this presentation. This is not the last that we will hear of what is going to happen as we move forward. So starting with Board Member Joe Marshall, if there are any questions or comments, Board Member Marshall, would you please give those at this time, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Porter. I want to reserve questions for later, but I have a prepared statement. I never thought that last Wednesday would lead to this. There's been nothing that this admin team has shown me in all the obstacles that they have been able to overcome and deliver through that caused me to have any doubt that you all can make this happen. I was mad, confused, perplexed, upset, but the worst of all, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that we didn't follow through on what this board was told was going to happen as we move forward. And so instead of staying in this place, I simply want to just talk about how we can grow from here. To this admin team, how do we grow from here? You must know that trust takes communication, honesty, and transparency. And the first day of school, this team failed on all 3 of those levels. You had built a lot of trust with a lot of individuals, with the bold changes you had pushed for, the new schools that were open, and sadly, majority of that is gone with a lot of our families, and that should hurt all of us. When missteps happen, such as this, at the admin level, it does nothing but embolden this community and this Board of Education to think that they can step in and do your job for you. It is not the job of this board to run the day-to-day operations of the school district. We get paid $150 per meeting to sit in these seats. It is time to get our governance structure in order and start doing the job that we are elected to do. Monitor student outcomes and quit meddling in the business of the admin plans. We are wasting time. So it is time for us to grow as well. And to this community, how do we grow from here? I want to thank all the businesses that have stepped in and opened their doors to students to help out during this crisis, because that's what communities do when we're in crisis. We open our doors to each other. And so with that being said, we have to be honest that as a community, we've allowed too much to be placed on our school system to take care of our kids and do stuff that we as the community should be doing for our kids. So I'll be the first to say, as a parent with reliable transportation, who drives my daughter to school, picks her up from school, I know there's days we pass by kids on bus stops and my daughter says, they go to my school. It's time to get to know our neighbors. It's time to introduce ourselves to one another. It's time to say, hey, your child goes to the same school my child goes to. Is that bus having problems? I'm willing to go outside of myself and go pick up somebody else and go take them to get their child. It hurts my heart. But there were kids stuck in schools and on buses, and those families had nobody to call. That should never happen in our community. And that's on all of us. Yes, this admin team failed. We shouldn't be here right now if they would have done their job. But along the way as well, we can all look in the mirror and see how we can help. This system is stretched as thin as it's going to get. I know a lot of us are stretched at home as thin as we're going to get. But anyway, that we can try to help each other and start staying in our lanes and doing our job. I believe that we can. And no, let me phrase. We will fix this. We will turn this thing around. Our kids will have the best outcome they've ever had in any school year. We are declaring it today that we will never be sitting here like this again. That's all.
Thank you, Judge Marshall. I'm going to ask those in the audience to hold your applause until the board member makes their comments, please, so everything can be heard. Yes, you will have the opportunity to applaud after the person speaks or before the person speaks, but let's allow the board members to share their thoughts so everybody can hear what they have to say. And when the speakers have the opportunity to come up, you will not be interrupted when you make your speech before us. So let's have a level of fairness for everyone. And we are here to speak. You are here to speak, and that is why we were here. So if we can just let the board members finish their comments and then the applause or whatever, let's see if that will be more respectful of the speakers and the speakers that are going to come to the board. So thank you for your applause. You may not agree that that's necessary, but it's important for each board member to be heard. And that's why I'm asking that each board member and each speaker that has signed up to be here tonight, that they are heard. So thank you. Board Member Duncan, and then after Board Member Duncan, Board Member Craig.
Okay, I want to say, the fiasco that we experienced was really a product of delays, and we can see how those delays developed, and I think it's hugely important for us to see how that all unfolded for us. The real problem is our bus driver shortage, and I know we have to ask ourselves, like they're asking all across the country, why is it that people don't want to drive our kids to school? What's going on that people don't want to drive our kids? I'll tell you, I just want to pledge to our drivers that I expect us to support our discipline code and these drivers and take their referrals seriously, have our assistant principals work these referrals and provide the consequences that need to be provided. Riding a bus is a privilege. It is not a guarantee. And the price of riding a bus is that you follow the rules. You cannot ride these buses and abuse drivers, and I will not stand for that. So if that's an issue with us, we need to stand behind our drivers and make sure they feel supported so we can continue to have our drivers and bring in more drivers. This is a central problem with what we're facing here. You know, I think we had so many opportunities for delays, and I guess I just want to ask a few questions to make sure we get some clarification on some of these delays. We had, I guess, 5,000 stops, and Dr. Polio, are you telling us that not all of these stops will remain?
No, those stops will remain. That we are working on the routing of that to make sure that we have exact times. That's the big part of it, is that we make sure the times are feasible. So we're not eliminating right now stops.
All right. One of the things about the depots and the support that we're going to provide, can you give us an idea of how sustainable this is to have people and vans meeting there at the depots to take care of kids who arrive late on those buses? Do you see this as a sustainable system?
Well, I don't think it is something, that is permanent. I think the inefficiencies of the first couple of weeks of school is the hard part about it, is every kid knowing what bus they get on, and those type of things. We'll continue it as long as we need to. And if efficiencies don't get better, we'll continue to do it. But what the data shows us is as you get into a couple of weeks of school, kids know the exact buses they're supposed to be on when they transfer. Those delays that always happen at school, for instance, at the 2:20 end time. This is the first time we've had elementary school students be the first ones to leave. They often take longer to board their buses because they may need assistance from the school. And so a lot of our 2:20 buses left at 2:50. But that won't happen for more than a few days. Once the kids start to realize that's my bus driver, I get on this bus. So no, it should not have to be permanent, but we will provide it as long as we need to.
Or whenever we need to, I guess. One of the things I've noticed when we talk about the routes, the assignment of routes, is there any incentive to get our most experienced drivers, the senior drivers, to take the longest routes or the most difficult routes? Do we provide incentive for them to do that?
Yes, we call them, what are the routes called? Challenging routes, so we provide an additional hourly stipend for challenging routes.
All righty, another source of delay, we ran into from Trumbull, all the traffic around Trumbull that backed up clear into airport area. Car riders waiting to pick up their kids or delivering their kids. What can we do to help our schools design some way to get those cars off the road? I mean, some schools I've seen do lanes on their parking lots, but other schools don't seem to have a system. And what can we do to help our schools get those car rider cars off the highways? Because those create quite a few delays all over the place.
Yeah, so we had 4 different instances of schools that had major traffic issues that really backed up our buses as well. And so a corresponding issue is a lack of crossing guards. And so when there are not crossing guards to direct traffic, that slows down the traffic immensely. And so, a student driver who's trying to take a left into a student parking lot may back up Crumb's Lane, a quarter of a mile, and they end up costing 30 minutes. And so, we cannot control crossing guards. That's a city function. The Attorney General, prior Attorney Generals have been clear about that, but we are going to use our team. We're contacting the city to hopefully get those crossing guards in the right place, and to use our team where necessary in order to support as well to get that traffic moving.
Well, it's hugely important for this community for us to try everything we can to get cars off of those roads so people can move around. One of the things I worry about are subs. I think I heard the estimate that 10% on the first day, we have 10% of the drivers not there, so we have to have subs. How in the world can we keep our subs updated about these routes and the things that they have to do to make this plan work.
Well, a reminder, I mean, there are things like medical leave and things like that too. That is, a sub isn't just necessarily a call-in. Maybe medical leaves, but yeah, I think communication with our sub drivers is important. That's where I think the GPS technology comes in, is that, you know, if we had the GPS technology and a sub driver gets on or a bus driver picks up another route, they're not using a piece of paper with directions on it. They're actually being told, this is the route, take a right here, stop here. And, you know, we have not supported our drivers with that technology, and we should have.
I think that's huge for them, especially if we expect subs to come in and not have problems or slow things down. One question I have about the app, how secure is the app? If we're being able to follow buses, everybody else is going to be able to follow buses. So how secure? Are we doing anything to make that secure?
We're gonna do everything we can to make it as secure as possible. I will tell you, 80% of large urban districts in America use this technology right now. Whether it's that app or a different app, 80% use that technology. So we're working on the safety and security of it, but I mean, that is definitely something that is a concern that we're talking about right now.
I hope we can check with the others and see how they do that, you know, secure. You know, I had reports of middle, high school, and elementary on the same bus. Was that a plan, or was that an accident?
Not part of the plan, so I'd love to know which bus so we can address that directly.
All right, I had just one more thing I wanted to ask. The issue about sidewalks, these routes, the walkways to bus stops and sections of no sidewalks, with being along highways. Is there anything that we can do to take a look at that? I know we've added stops, so maybe that will take some of that burden off of walking along a road without a sidewalk. But is there anything else that we can do? Because when we don't have sidewalks, and it's let's see.
Well, I mean, we can work with the city. Unfortunately, that is a host of municipalities that are involved in it. That's just not LMPD when we look at a lack of sidewalks. I mean, we can go into parts of the community all over and see places where there's no sidewalks. And so, I mean, that's one of the trade-offs we talk about is, you know, moving bus stops. That adds to our already very thin system. And so there are 3 or 4 things that the state identifies as the most important safety issues that, you know, we have to fix. And those are things like a sex offender that lives close by. I mean, those that are within, so I don't have the exact distance. Those are things we are forced that we have to, you know. A sidewalk is not that in an ideal situation. Yes, every single bus stop would be at a sidewalk. I don't think that's feasible. I really don't in our community. But I think to Board Member Marshall's point, I mean, these are things we've got to identify and say that other entities are involved in supporting us in this.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, from the beginning, I had issues, lots of issues with this plan. And one of the things that I think is coming right behind us is darkness. And I hope we're prepared to deal with what the impact is of our kids walking in the dark, or elementary kids walking in the dark, and coming home in the dark. But that's all the questions I have right now. Thank you, Dr. Polio, for trying to explain all of this difficult information to the community the way that you have done. I do appreciate that, and I think everybody appreciates how difficult that was for you and for your team. So thank you. Thank you.
We're lucky to call on the part of the community to be here for several hours.
No, I do not think that. Once again, I'll say this, and it's unfortunate that I think that there have been attacks of any way on the board for this. This is, I understand, and this is not something that I think a board can do. It is on us to do that. And we may be some technology contracts in the future that cost significant amounts of money. We will bring those to you. The app is not one of them.
Guys, I can't hear them. Help me out.
The app is not one of those, but we will be bringing some significant technologies that we will ask to support fiscally. But at this time, no, I do not think there's anything that this board can do before Friday. It's on us.
Yeah. I think we were looking for transparency as to what happened, assurance that it won't happen again, and accountability. We're looking for internal audit. Provide that level of accountability. I'm not sure if we have an internal auditor today. Has that position been filled?
Yes, it has started yesterday.
So, what is this person's name?
It's Ms. May Porter, I'm sorry.
Just make sure that she reaches out to all of us and schedule a meeting, please. Thank you. I'm anxious to see that the system works on Friday. Going forward, we have to reduce the number of riders in our system. That is inevitable. I don't know what that looks like, if we're going to look at ridership to bring kids. We need to eliminate ridership for magnets. I think all those things need to be on the table, because the only thing that I hear is Band-Aids. I don't hear that more drivers are coming to work anytime soon.
Board Member Vanhoose.
Thank you. I do want to start by, this sounds awful, I want to congratulate our bus drivers, our principals, our teachers, the folks who did get the kids there and home, stayed with them for long hours, that they were late, because many of those folks missed talking to their own children about their first days of school, getting their own kids on the bus, things like that. And so just thank you and congratulations to successfully caring for those kids on the fly in a way that I don't think they had anticipated. So thank you to them very much for doing that. I will reiterate things that have already been said. Moving forward, I think we do want to hear more about the audit and what the internal accountability plan is going to be. I think that's something that is being demanded of us. And so I want to be very clear that the next time we can meet, I think probably all appreciate an update on what that part looks like, because I do think the first priority obviously has to be getting our kids in school and fixing what is broken. One thing that I've heard just so many times over the years in various kinds of conferences I've attended, leadership books I've read, things like that, they always kind of go back to, I think, the 80s and the 90s, GE, Toyota, I feel like there's some other car manufacturers in there, have systems on their assembly line where any employee who sees a problem can alert those higher ups in the bureaucracy that there is a problem. Do we have something in place where our bus drivers, other support staff, non-instructional staff, if they see a problem and say, hey, I'm identifying this, it will get to the right people to make those corrections?
Not effectively, no. I mean, I don't think we have a hotline, and obviously we encourage all of our employees, wherever they're, to report to their supervisor if there is an issue. But to say that it's clearly moves up to decision maker, no, that's something we need to do better.
Okay. And this is not the board does not oversee personnel except for one position in the district. that I would very strongly recommend to various leaders at any level of management to listen to their staff and take those concerns very seriously, because the boots on the ground usually have the greatest pulse of what's happening. So I do want to make sure that whatever operational changes are made, that we are empowering all of our employees to be contributors to the solutions.
Agreed.
With significant changes to the routes, it sounds like at least some of them are going to change substantially. Will our bus drivers have to go through that bid process again?
So that's the big challenging part of this is, a couple of things that, made this difficult was, the routes, getting into alpha routes after the student assignment part is done. So really our routes that we have built have been really cut and paste from the year before for probably 40 years. And so right or wrong, that's the way it's been done. To redo all of our routes, though, you have to wait until student assignment is done. So clearly we got those to alpha route at a time that made a very significant time crunch. So we are working on efficiencies in the short term. A long-term change will require allowing the bus drivers to know new routes. So we are targeting to bring to you potentially the fall break as some opportunity to do that if we can.
I'm sorry, KNOW, no new routes or no new routes? I want to make sure. You said for the bus drivers, it would be
For them to
new
know,
routes.
I'm sorry,
Okay, I just wanted
for them to be able to navigate any major changes. So they can navigate, I believe they'll tell you, a couple of stop changes, but to have a significantly different route will require either technology for them or some time to work that out. And so we've got to have days to do that when students aren't in session. And so that is what we need. So yes, we are working on efficiencies right now with the resources that we have, but we're really looking to some longer term solutions too around much more efficient routes.
Okay, thank you. And I see my time is up, but I will be very quick. This will not be done tonight at this board meeting, but I think that family members and employees are requesting that we approve changes to the calendar as soon as possible, so that not only vacations, but staff members that have to take summer classes, students who are enrolling in the military and have to have ship out dates, all those kinds of things, that we can help them to plan for those things.
So a couple of things. Once again, I said this yesterday, we will recommend to you to forgive as many days as possible from this. We may need to use a couple, since our faculty is working, a couple of our non-student attendance days, we call them gold days, and have student days instead during that time. But we're going to do everything we can to minimize that. Now, a big issue with that is inclement weather. And so it's hard to know exactly what the outlook is for days in the changing calendar until we get through inclement weather. But we will do our best. We'll we will forgive or recommend to you to forgive every day possible and work to make sure that it does not go into the summer months.
And we can still have 10 NTI days for inclement weather, correct?
Correct. We have 10 NTI days that we can use for inclement weather.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Chris?
Thank you. I wholeheartedly endorse everything that Board Member Joe Marshall said. He said it better than I think I could ever say it. And I also, as I have, in the week, I think as a board member, there's lots of people who contributed to this, and one of the things that each of us has to do is ask ourselves, how did we contribute to this in some way? And I think it's clear as a board member that I did not do enough, to ensure that JCPS administration invested the time and resources to adequately prepare for the momentous change that we were undertaking, which I think is a change that was desperately needed and worthwhile. But so I'm sorry that I didn't do enough as a board member around that. And I do want to also echo what Board Member McIntosh said about, I hope there's many things we learn from this, but I think one of the top things that we should learn is the importance of listening to employee feedback from employees on the ground and giving that more consideration than we seem to have given it in this case. It's a little difficult to hear that, you know, there was technology out there that we could have had that would have helped our bus drivers quite a bit that we didn't have. I just hope that, or I will expect that we get that technology implemented as soon as we possibly can. And also, as Board Member McIntosh said, you know, other several other board members too, the trust that we have to rebuild won't be rebuilt tonight, and there's nothing that we can say here tonight that will rebuild that trust. That'll be something that we'll have to do every day going forward. So there's a lot of factors that played into this, and we'll need to unpack all of those in the days and weeks ahead, including, you know, attracting and retaining more bus drivers. They are, I think, some of our most underpaid staff for the work that they do, and that's something that this board can do, is increase the attractiveness of the bus driver compensation. You know, we live in a market society that works on the principle of supply and demand, and when you need a larger supply of laborers, you have to make that position more attractive, and that's something that the board can do, and I certainly think the board should do. That's all I have for tonight, and of course we'll have much more discussion and questions of everything in the days and weeks ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Short?
Thank you, Chair Ford. Thank you, Dr. Colio, for owning this work and owning it publicly, and also for this presentation. You have taken a great effort to explain where things went wrong and what you and your team are doing to correct the issue. I would get off with what my colleagues have stated earlier. I think this community is requiring and demanding accountability. And as such, I do think there are some things that we can do to help foster the rebuilding of trust. One of those things is, you mentioned having RMAC, I believe, to do the audit. I think it would go a long way in order to help foster folks to have an outside agency do that audit. Because when audits are done from the inside, they often tend to paint a more positive picture than those audits that are done from the outside. And I think in order to foster the trust that we need to go forward in this community, that inviting outside agencies to do that would go a long way with this community. Also, as it relates to accountability, the report that you gave, I guess just preliminarily, is damning on many levels. It sounds as though people just didn't do their jobs. And that is unacceptable. I personally believe that we are moving in the right direction as a school system with the changes that we have elected to make to the district. I think all of us probably agree with that. But we don't deal with personnel, but it would seem to me that it is critical that at this time in history, as JCPS seeks to update this district, it's important to have the right people on the bus. And it seems to me that we do not have the right people on the bus. And maybe the right people are on the bus, just not in the right seats. And I think that's something that must be corrected in order to move forward with the trust of this community. I would like to know what must we do in order to ensure that there are more crossing guards in those problematic areas?
That's been an issue that we have been wrestling with since, I believe, 2018. And it is reflective of all the staffing shortages around the nation. I mean, that's just another one. I think there is 40 to 50 vacancies right now, something in that neighborhood. So we've got to use our people. We've got to use our people. Like I can't, once again, I can sit here and say we hope that it gets better, but I think we've got to figure out a way to use our people and to make that work, especially in the early days of the school year.
How many district vehicles do we plan to assign to depots?
I'm sorry, I don't have the plan in front of the other team. We still have a lot of team members that are working right now, so they're working on the Friday back, but I know we have dozens of vehicles that are prepared to be out and additional backup buses.
When can we expect the most up-to-date technology to be placed on our buses to
I think the app, like I said, will be either first day or late or early to mid next week. But I've charged Dr. Belcher that work with T-Mobile to get that as quickly as we possibly can.
Now, the app is for parents, correct?
The app is for parents, but we'll also use it for schools as well.
But for the GPS technology?
Yeah, so like I said, there are some significant restrictions on that from the state, but I'm hoping that we're moving as quickly as we can. I can't give a specific date on that. It will, there are things that have to be done to every bus to make that work. The equipment has to come in. We got supply chain stuff, so I don't want to put a promise on that. What I can say is we're going to move as quickly as we can.
We've heard you say that we're going to have to make some tough decisions about transportation in the future, who we can provide transportation for. Has there been any thinking around potential partnerships? We've partnered with Miller already. Is there any thinking around partnering with
Yeah, we've reached out and talked to TARC. We talked to them last year. They're struggling with the same thing, which is a driver shortage as well. And so that becomes very difficult too. But I will say this, TARC is willing to help. I've spoken to the mayor. He is very supportive of it, but it's finding a way to plug them into a system where they have shortages as well.
Thank you, Dr. Short. I have a couple of questions, I guess, to Dr. Polio and Chris Perkins. As we looked at this new plan, when did we actually start the work with working with our bus drivers who deserve to be talked to in the beginning and as we went along the way? So we are tonight listening about technology that we did not have, but when did this work start? Because from what I'm hearing from my constituents, 4 days before school started, the bus driver was given an enormous amount of things to do, knowing in June when school was starting in the fall. So when did we actually start doing the work that needed to be done for our bus drivers and our families so that they would be ready and prepared to move forward? Can you give us a date as to when the work started?
So we started working on enrollment projections back early in the spring, and that's really what enrollment projections, addresses, and our student assignment plans are kind of a play into how we begin that routing process. That starts in the spring. It was late May when we provided that information to Alpha Route, and then it was early July when they provided the routing solution to us. That was about July 10th when we received that from them. July 17th is when we were able to import their solution to our routing software. And then that following week is when drivers began to bid on their routes. And so last Wednesday before last was when drivers report back to work. We paid them for 3 days of simulation. And then several of them actually came in on the weekend and those 3 days prior to school starting to practice their routes as well.
Okay, I want to also say the importance of the internal audit committee, looking at what has happened, that it does not happen again. Since 1975, when the two districts came together, to my knowledge, we have never had a student taken off the bus at 9:58 p.m. This is unacceptable. And I am speaking on behalf of the District 1 because the child that was on the bus was in District 1. This is not safe for our children. It's not safe for our drivers. So I keep hearing us say, we need to. The question is, let's get it going and let's make it work. Our children deserve it, our families deserve it, and our bus drivers deserve it, teachers, principals, and everybody. This is unacceptable. And again, I've been around a mighty long time, and I know that in 1975, there was not a child that was let off the bus at 9:58 p.m. Plus, some of our schools were late getting buses, and thank you to our security department who sent people there to help be in the schools. But I am supporting the internal audit committee, also reaching out to an outside agency to come to give us the what happened so it becomes a part of our history. We do not want this to happen again in any school system. And so far as the things about the tags for our students, these are things that have been in place. This is not something new. So the question becomes, what was the slowdown and why were we not getting this done? And I've had the opportunity to work with transportation in some of my schools, to work with students, not this year, but in previous years when principals worked to make sure everything was all right. So we are hearing things tonight, but it's okay to say we're sorry, but what we must say is this cannot happen again. This is public education. It's our responsibility to be available to all students. Everybody doesn't speak English, and it's only the right thing to do, to listen to our bus drivers, to let them tell us what their thoughts are. They are the ones doing the work. And to not listen to them, I don't understand it. And also listen to our schools and our principals and our teachers. So I agree with what many of the words that have been said this evening, but until we document what has happened that should never happen again, and that should become the history of the Jefferson County Public Schools. So thank you for this information this evening, but this is not over. We have got to have more information about when, why, how, and what will happen, that it will never happen again. So I'm not just speaking to you, Mr. Perkins, Dr. Polio. This is a group effort. Yes, we are elected, but we are 7 of us and a bunch more in this district. But we have to be responsible for taking care of our children, our bus drivers, our families, our schools, and our staff. That's all I have to say. It was disgusting. And when your phone starts going at 5:30 in the morning and people are concerned, and at 9:58 at night, it's pitch dark, and I had children on the bus at 9:58. So you might say, what's wrong with her? I am the District 1 school board member, and I am here to speak for the safety of everyone. So I've said what I've got to say, and we've got to find out why it happened, and it doesn't need to happen ever again. It was a mistake, so we have to learn from our mistake, and that's what I have to say. And our children are important. That's all I have to say. I'm looking forward to the internal audit committee and the outside committee coming in and giving us what happened, why it happened, and what we must do that it will never happen again. Thank you to the bus drivers. Thank you to everyone. But this, again, I'm blessed to be an educator. I care about the children. I care about the bus drivers. I care about this district. This is unacceptable, and it should not have happened. So that's all I have to say. I look forward to the report that will come back to the district, that will become a part of history, so that we won't continue to make this same mistake over again. That's all I have to say.
are accurate and correct in your feedback to us. Thank you. That concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? No items have been pulled down to be for discussion this evening. There was a revision to the agenda as to some things that are not being addressed on. I think Board Member Craig requested that some things not be voted on tonight, and so they are not a part of the consent calendar.
Thank you.
You have a question? Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented this evening? Board Member Craig, seconded by Board Member McIntosh. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. So now we will move forward. The board planning calendar, is there any discussion on the planning calendar? And if not, is there a motion to receive the board planning calendar this evening? Is there a motion to receive the planning calendar? Ms. Duncan and then Board Member Craig. Did you have a question, Ms. Duncan? Are you making a motion?
Well, yes, I wanted to say something about the planning calendar. I think I talked to Ms. McIntosh about this. We would like to have at some point a presentation on our alternative schools. And we have a variety of alternative schools, not all disciplinary alternative schools, but we would like to have a work session somewhere in there to better inform everybody about what's going on.
Okay, so what you're asking for is a work session at a later time about the planning calendar, correct?
Yes.
That's about the alternative schools also, okay. So, having said that, shall we say that we want that to be included as part of the planning calendar as we go forward? So is that the motion from you, Ms. Duncan, and Board Member McIntosh? Is that the recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second to the motion? Board Member McIntosh, all those in favor, would you please raise your hand? Those opposed, please raise your hand. Those opposed were Board Member Marshall and then Dr. Chris. Good, thank you very much. Are there any committee reports this evening from anyone? Any committee reports? Are there any board reports this evening? Board Member Craig.
I just wanted to follow up on the recommendation from Dr. Schill for an independent review, and I think that probably does make sense on the operations failure. That we echo that concern or that sentiment. I just wanted to use this opportunity to say that I agree with it. I don't know that that requires a vote this evening, but I would perhaps use this opportunity to ask maybe Mr. Brown to make a recommendation to us as to what that might look like.
We will do that. We'll have an external company or independent agency do that. I don't know. If you want to vote to memorialize it, that's fine. But
I don't know that we need a vote. I just wanted to share the sentiment right now, and I'm sorry if I overlooked that from your presentation. I saw an internal review. I didn't see external review.
No, I have no problem with an external review whatsoever. I want to make sure, other than what will come with cost. So just understanding that. Thank you.
Okay, any other board reports? Board Member Marshall.
Thank you, Chair Porter. Myself and Board Member McIntosh had the privilege and pleasure of meeting with the Jefferson County League of Cities on Saturday as part of our board listening sessions for our governance work. And I just want to send a huge thank you to Mayor Tonini and the City of St. Matthews for hosting that meeting and for everyone who attended. It was a great conversation around our work as board members and focusing on student outcomes. And there was a lot of vision and values that came from those individuals, and it was presented in a way, even with all the dark cloud of everything happening, was focused on the work of helping us get that governance together. So I just wanted to report that and thank the Jefferson County League of Cities.
Thank you. Any other board reports? Okay, we will now move on to persons that are here this evening to address the board. Those who are signed up to speak but are unable to do so because of the expiration of 45-minute time limit, you are encouraged to submit your comments in writing to the board. Comments received for this purpose are reviewed by the board and are incorporated into the minutes of the board. You may email your comments if you're not able to speak this evening to Angela Gilpin at jeffersonkyschools.us, and that will become a part of our minutes when we receive the minutes for this evening. So there is something that I need to read about the speakers, but also the board has always made it a policy that if we have students to speak, that our students speak first. But tonight we have one speaker that is a student, and I will quickly go over the participation of speakers. In accordance with board policy 01.421, the board expects the persons who have signed up to address the board will limit their remarks to the subject that they are listed at the time they signed up, that their presentation will not include any abusive remarks, and that subject, and that they will present their remarks in a manner that is consistent with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Also, in accordance with board policy, the board reserves the right to limit, extend, or terminate discussion on any subject. Discussion of personnel matters is not permitted, as the board has no legal authority regarding such matters, and such discussion is not appropriate. Personnel matters are within the authority of the superintendent. If a speaker begins to discuss a personnel matter, the chair shall immediately terminate the speaker's remarks. A speaker may not initiate charges or complaints against an individual district employee. Discussion of a district employee by name or position is not permitted in order to ensure confidentiality and fairness for the employees. If a person Next is Rob Hulver to speak about transportation. Rob Hulver to speak about transportation. Our next speaker is Callie McCarthy. Callie McCarthy to talk about the first day of kindergarten. Callie McCarthy. Next is Patricia Matheson to talk about accountability. Patricia Matheson to talk about accountability. Welcome, Ms. Matheson.
Thank you, Chair Porter. Good evening, my name is Pat Matheson, and I thank you for affording me this opportunity to speak at the Jefferson County Public School Board meeting today. To say that I was livid is an understatement. In light of the recent transportation debacle that occurred in our school system, I thought it was important to come and speak on behalf of the families and the more than 90,000 students who rely on this board to make informed decisions in their best interest. And while Dr. Polio has publicly accepted responsibility for this transportation disaster, I want to clarify that it was not his responsibility alone. This board voted and approved the plan with one lone vote against it by Linda Duncan. JCPS has a transportation department that employs more than 600 drivers. And none of them told you that this plan couldn't and wouldn't work? Or did they? I understand that a meeting was requested by the bus drivers with Dr. Polio, and it was declined. And while the board had lots of questions and expressed great concern, why didn't the board demand that he meet with the bus drivers and hear their concerns? I've heard it several times tonight by Member Kolb and McIntosh that boots on the ground. But Dr. Cosby once said to me, the people closest to the problems are the ones with the solutions. Why don't we just listen? We have heard from Dr. Polio, and I greatly appreciate hearing from the board tonight and sharing in your disappointment in what happened. But my question is, what involvement will this board have moving forward in overseeing Dr. Polio's management of this district? In closing, I know that I can't get any answers tonight. However, I am requesting a written response from this board. in 24 hours. And I plan to share that response, whether I get one or not, with my platform constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Matheson. Our next speaker is Leslie Collins. Leslie Collins to speak to us about home daycare bus stop. Leslie Collins. Leslie Collins. Our next speaker is Anthony Little. Anthony Little to talk about makeup days. Anthony Little. Our next speaker is Corey Offit, who will speak about school bus issue. Corey Offit. Our next speaker is Katina Farrell. Katina Farrell to talk about bus routes. Katina Farrell. Our next speaker is Anita Foreman. Anita Foreman to speak to us about busing. Anita Foreman. Our next speaker is Raven Irvin. Raven Irvin to speak to us about redistricting. Raven Irvin. Our next speaker is Lyndon Pryor to speak to us about transportation. Thank you, Mr. Pryor, for being here this evening.
Thank you. Again, my name is Lyndon Pryor, and I stand before you as a parent, as a community leader, as the interim president, CEO of the Louisville Urban League. My public education gave me many things, but one thing that I'm truly grateful for, and it's appreciation for context. And it is the understanding that nothing happens in a vacuum, nothing happens by itself. And I think much of what has been shown and discussed today echoes that. JCPS has a transportation issue because Louisville has a transportation issue, because Louisville has an economic gravity issue, because Louisville has an infrastructure issue, because Louisville has a segregation issue, because Louisville has an infrastructure issue. These issues are community-wide. And unfortunately, the history of this nation is that we always put the burden of these problems on our school district, on our administrators, on our teachers, on our principals. That is not to say, obviously, that there is accountability to be had for what has happened and what has taken place. And it sounds as if that is happening, and we encourage more of that with the audit and other actions that need to be taken by the district. But it is a call to all of us as parents, as community members, as organizations, to do what we can to make this city a better and more equitable place so that our district is not burdened by these issues. With that, I have a request. That's really why I came. It really is in line with what Board Member Marshall stated. And that is for you, Dr. Polio, and your team to use us as community organizations, parents, other institutions, and tell us what more we can do to be able to help this situation, not just moving into Friday and Monday, but in the days to come. Are there clear steps that we all can take to make this situation better for our students? It is time for us all to do more and to step up. The league is at the ready, and I know there are many other organizations that are as well, but we need to understand how we can be a help and not a hindrance in this. And so please, where we have the opportunity, where you are able over the coming days and the coming weeks, help us to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor, for being here this evening. Our next speaker is Daniel Cobble to speak about schedule issues. Daniel Cobble. Thank you, Mr. Cobble, for being here this evening.
As I scheduled my appointment yesterday, each program that you propose is predicted to not work and ends in chaos for teachers, parents, and students. At least once a week, I meet a parent or teacher frustrated with JCPS. You people are using our tax dollars to systematically fail public schools to create a social underclass of students that will become adults. For example, I cannot believe parents are allowing you to get away with not teaching handwriting and to work out math equations. A teacher recently told me that she quit last year in anticipation of this year's chaos. She said my idea of neighborhood modular classrooms brought to you last April and May is common sense given the bus driver shortage that may be permanent. Because the JCPS programs are expensively reactive and not proactive for meeting needs, I will continue to seek your removal, Dr. Polio, from superintendent. Your 2003 $74,000 pay raise is simply payment to keep disrupting the education of our kids. You also have with you my recent write-up on young Cleo Cole, the transgender child deceived by transgender influences. We now know that the push for child sex changes is really about sterilizing children to prevent procreation. It's about depopulation, not overpopulation, but for the current status quo to hold on to power. Thank you for letting me speak.
Rob Matthew to speak about start of school issues. Rob Matthew. Thank you, Mr. Matthew, for being here this evening.
Good evening to the board and Dr. Polio. I doubt I can add much more that you haven't already heard. I can only say I'm deeply disappointed at how badly the district failed this week and worried about how that just sharpens the target that Frankfurt has had on our back for years, including, sadly, many of our Louisville legislators. With that in mind, I'd like to do something a little different and say some things this week to those representatives in Frankfurt, none of whom appear to be here tonight or really any night. Unlike JCPS, they don't typically give us a twice-monthly forum to call enough for their actions, but I'm sure they're paying attention tonight. I'd like to remind our legislators, including those who serve JCPS districts, that there's a difference between criticizing what happened last week and actively cheering for the failure of our district. You could have spent time addressing the very real issues that all districts face with transportation and attracting and retaining bus drivers, teachers, and other employees. Instead, you focused your attention on Senate Bill 150, a bill that accomplished nothing except creating a wedge issue that our districts had to deal with, and most certainly will face legal action over. Then you had the nerve to attack the elected officials for daring to discuss the implications of that law. People have been attacking JCPS for nearly a half century, based on the way the system was in 1975. Our legislators want school choice, but they refuse to acknowledge that JCPS has had school choice and a transportation plan that tried to accommodate those choices for all they wanted them. Perhaps they don't acknowledge JCPS's school choice system because it highlights that school choice presents very real issues. Each school can't offer infinite program choices, nor is there infinite room within each school to accommodate everyone who wants to attend. Providing transportation for choice is expensive, logistically difficult, and requires people to do highly stressful work for low pay. Additionally, there are many issues with equity that school choice doesn't address, even though we like to pretend that it does. It's notable that our local GOP legislators are now pivoting to neighborhood schools, touting the 2017 plan of my representative, Kevin Bratcher, which would have destroyed our magnet programs within JCPS and gave no consideration to the logistical concerns of making that shift or negative impacts to existing students in those schools. JCPS had a bold and ambitious plan to try and fix issues in transportation, as well as give most at-risk students more options closer to home. Clearly, that failed. And it was in service of what every Republican says that they want. We want, as a community, just to toss a grenade in this and start over, and based on the input of whom? So I ask our state legislators some questions. Do you want neighborhood schools, school choice, or both? If JCPS can't accomplish both, what is your plan for accomplishing it? If you want to move solely to neighborhood schools, what is your plan for minimizing the disruption to students who are in magnet programs and making sure that there are adequate facilities available to all students in the county? If you want choice, what is your plan for making sure there's adequate transportation and resources to support it for those choices? If you break up the district, how do you do so equitably? Ensure minimal disruption, make sure that resources are fairly distributed. If you divert public funds to private schools, will you hold them to the same standards and legal requirements as public schools, such as enrollment and staffing open to all regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation, and ability to pay, mandatory accountability testing, and demographics data collection?
Maureen Warden to talk about equity in JCPS. Thank you, Ms. Warden, for being here this evening.
Thank you. My name is Maureen Warden. I'm a parent of a JCPS student, and I'm a social worker who's worked in community-based services. So when speaking about equity, I want to challenge what your idea of equity is. I have worked with the West End and I live in the South End, and I know that our schools are failing in the West End and South End. We are not getting the support that we need. We have a nice new facility in Norton Commons, that's fantastic, but our kids in our areas need support. So when we talk about equity, is busing our kids really equitable? Say it. So, being a single parent, it is really hard to go all around Louisville in community-based services and take time to be at after-school stuff with my sons. I can't get to his school on time because, there's just not enough time in the day. So it reinforces the idea that people from lower socioeconomic neighborhoods are bad parents. We're not bad parents. There's just not enough time in the day. So when we're talking about equity, and I hear you guys talk about it all the time, and I've been advocating for this since 2017. 2017, I have spoken. 2018, I spoke to you all. Nobody hears me, nobody listens. Don't just listen to me from a parent point of view, but as a social worker. We're talking about boots on the ground. I'm in community-based services. I'm in the West End, I'm in the South End, I'm in JCPS schools, doing therapy with students. Listen to us about what equity really means. It means fostering communities. The busing isn't working. It hasn't worked since 2017. It didn't work this past week. It was an epic failure. My son, he has a cell phone, so thank God I was able to communicate with him. I knew he was at the bus compound, I knew he was safe, but when he got home, he said there was no food, they didn't offer him water, and he was really, really upset. So coming from a parent point of view, that was really disheartening. But I want to challenge you guys on what your idea of equity is. Because right now with the busing, it's not equitable. Having our kids get on the bus an hour, 2 hours before school starts to get them where they need to go, and then 2 hours on the way home. That's not equitable. It's not good for their mental health. We need more resources in the West End, we need more resources in the South End. So I really want to challenge you guys on what your thoughts on equity is. And hopefully we can come up with a plan. There's no good short-term solution, but I want you guys to be thinking about forward solutions.
Our next speaker is Shayla Porter to speak about transportation. Ms. Porter will be here this evening.
Well, good evening. We're having a great time tonight, aren't we? Okay, so I'm gonna get right to it. I had a whole thing I was gonna say, but I'm gonna just get right to it. I have 3 kids in JCPS, 2 in high school, 1 in elementary. It was not fun on Wednesday, but I'll be perfectly honest with you. My expectation was that it was gonna be a circus. So I had a plan already in place and my kids were fine. I'm kind of here to speak for the parents who did not have the village that I have. The parents who don't have the help that I have. The parents who don't have a salary job where I can come in when I want to and leave when I want to. I can work from home. I can do all kinds of different things. I can afford to send my kids to private school, to be perfectly honest with you, but I don't. Because I have a public school education, so I want my kids to have that. The issue that I have, and that I've had from the start of all of this, even last year when I was getting notifications of buses that my kids weren't on, but never getting them for the buses my kids were on, I will say, the root cause is basically what the two people before me said. If we could make the schools equitable, you wouldn't have a transportation problem like you do. You wouldn't need to send somebody from one end of town to the other. If I had a cluster school close to where I live, I would send my kid there if the education met the standard of the schools that my children go to now. So my issue is not the busing. And I appreciate the apology, but honey, you can stop now for real. Because the truth is, my mother said something to me a while back and she said, I'm so glad that you're sorry, but I just want you to change, so stop saying that. What I really, really hope that you guys get, even though I know that it's hard, is to change that truth. Make the schools equitable. Please. We have waited for decades for that to happen. Before y'all were probably even born, to be honest with you. It's not something that I'm mad at any of you for. I just want to be honest with you. The root cause is that. The root cause is not that we have a transportation problem. We have an equity problem. So I just wanted to say that.
Our last speaker is Will Mitchell, who will talk to us about equity. Will Mitchell. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for being here this evening.
I'd like to start off real quick with a letter from a Roman author. Says, be instant, in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort, all long-suffering, with all long-suffering and doctrine. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall they heap themselves teachers, having itching ears, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall turn unto fables. But watch thou in all things, endure afflictions, and do work of an evangelist, and make proof of thy ministry. I'm not a speaker, I'm not the guy you expect to be here, I don't want to be, but when the Holy Spirit puts it on you, you're supposed to. You are supposed to obey. And many of you mentioned having children. Having children. You are a steward of a child, so you should know what we expect from the leaders. Whether you have a faith or not, whether you realize that you're in that chair because God has allowed you to be there. And I want you to think very hard about that. And I'm not here to throw stones. I'm here out of love. There is a decision that you have to make. And if you make that decision and get your hearts right with God, then we wouldn't have to sit in these chairs and look on these television shows and these broadcasts and think about the decisions that you're making. Because if your hearts and decisions are right and according to the Word of God, they'll be in alignment with all of those of us that are as well. I love you guys, and I hope that this sets hard on all of your hearts. And if you take this home, and then you realize that we are, as our governor says, in this together. So let's get there through Jesus Christ. Amen.
That completes our speakers for this evening, so I am grateful that the board was able to hear from everyone that signed up to speak this evening. So that takes care of our speakers, and at this time, there is no reason to have an executive session. There are no additional action items. So at this time, which happens to be 8:14 p.m., is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Board member Ryan, second, Board member All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you for those who attended our meeting this evening. Thank you.
So how you doing?
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
We will not make excuses. We will make changes. It is our duty.
It is our duty to we must love
Does the mayor still plan to spend this money in the same way following this announcement? And if so, why does he think he has the authority?
We have nothing to lose.
I've been here every day.
We have nothing to lose but our chance.
But our chance.